amazing. Matt, thank you very much indeed. Okay, now, slight change to the timetable because we actually have to say goodbye to Bill a little bit earlier as he has to whiz off to catch the same plane, but just he has to go a bit earlier. So instead of putting him at the end, I'm going to ask Bill to come and share his thoughts with us now, and then he will leave us on his way back to the States. There you are, Bill. Welcome back. I hope you've had a really good day and have seen and heard some things that might have been a bit different. I guarantee you've seen and heard some things in the poetic sphere that are a bit different. But looking forward to your impressions. Bill.
Jonathan, thank you so much, and thank you all. I am very sorry to leave early, but wonderful Yolanda, who's been putting things together for me this whole time here, and I think has done a lot, said you have to leave at 5:30. So that's what I'm going to do. It's very kind of you to have asked a Yank at all to come over here and talk. The idea that we might at this stage have something to contribute to this conversation seems unlikely. I am reminded, however, that it was not that long ago, in the 1970s, when Fritz Schumacher came to visit the United States, that President Carter, in fact, held a reception for him at the White House. Hard to imagine with some of the subsequent occupants of that office, but we have high hopes that the day will come again, and only 3 or 4 weeks in the future. The thing that's interested me most all day is the way that conversation after conversation takes us back to this ultimate question of individual versus community as the way to think about, the way to deal with, the way to handle, the way to change some of our ways of being. And it leads me to reflect one powerful thing about the world that we've lived in for the last 50 or 100 years, the world of cheap energy, the world of cheap fossil fuel. It's done 3 things. It's allowed us to become rich. It's destroyed our climate. And it's also made us the first of our species to have no practical need of our neighbors for anything. You know, most of us, everybody on our street could, die tonight of some strange disease, and we might be sad. We might not. In America, 3/4 of Americans don't know their next-door neighbor, okay? So it might not be an overwhelming sadness. But at any rate, it wouldn't put much of a dent in one's daily life. The things that we use come at a great distance from a great remove, and we're not in that kind of relationship anywhere near as much as we were or could be or will be in the future. It's incredibly exciting to see the kind of planning and thinking that's going on here in the States, all over the world, for that world that comes next. And I congratulate Rob so much on his prize today, well earned, one of the many teachers who's helping us around the world figure out what we're going to do, the kind of architects of the coming future. Now, I want to try to say this carefully so I don't say it wrong, because that's the work that I love to do too, and the work that's most important to me of the work that I do is that thinking about that new future and helping to build it in the place where I live. But as architects of that new future, we also have to deal with the fact that we already live in a house, and that house is on fire, and that we need to put out that fire as best we can before we get on with the task of building the house that we're going to live in next, okay? Because the house that's on fire is threatening to cause just uncontrollable damage everywhere, to spread, and to make that future that we're going to try to build almost impossible. That's the image that comes to mind for the work that I do that, in a sense, to me, is less interesting than my work as an architect of the new future, thinking about localism and things. It's my work as an activist. At home, when I'm home in my small town in Vermont, I'm on the volunteer fire brigade, you know. And so in the middle of the night, go out and put out fires. Well, that's what we're trying to do simultaneously with thinking about the future. We got to think about where we are right now and how we're going to put that fire out. And while we're doing that, it's important not to miss the distinction, and it's an odd distinction, between the practical and the symbolic actions that one takes. One's first emphasis, one's first impulse faced with a practical problem is always to say, let's do some practical things about it. Too much carbon in the atmosphere, let's put some new light bulbs up, or whatever. Well, these are important things to do. I mean, I've done them. My daughter, 15-year-old daughter, refers to me, a great Harry Potter fan, refers to me as the Dark Lord because, you know, our house is rather dim on occasion, you know. I drove the first hybrid car in the state of Vermont. Whatever it is, you know, all these things are very important. But, and they're all very important as we think about this architecture that we're going to build for the future, the communities and the homes and things that we will inhabit. But if what you're worried about is reducing the amount of carbon in the atmosphere to the level that the scientists now tell us we need to reduce it in the time that we have, which is a very short period of time, maybe the 100 months that Andrew was talking about, maybe less than that. Rajendra Pachari, the head of the IPCC, the Indian scientist, said not long ago that if we hadn't made fundamental change by 2012, that some of these irreversible feedback loops will be out of control. Okay? If you're worried about reducing carbon as much as we need to in the time that we have, then it must be said that doing things like changing your light bulbs are not as practical as they are symbolic. Okay? Because you can't make the math add up one household at a time, one campus at a time, one anything at a time. The only way you can make the math add up is if we can get political change at a high enough level, the national and the international level, that will fundamentally change the economics of energy enough to drive this change down to every nook and cranny of our economy in very short order. That is an enormously heavy piece of political lifting. There's never been a harder political challenge than that because it goes at some of the most fundamental interests in our economy, and it goes at the fundamental inertia in our lives, okay?